Starting in 5 seconds. Madam Chairman, I am glad that we are having a debate on the European Common Market. I wish that it had taken place earlier. Had Parliament been in session when the Minister of Aviation of the UK visited Delhi, it would have had an opportunity for arming government with its views, thus helping it in formulating the statement, but at any rate indicating to the world at large that Parliament is fully behind the Finance Minister in the statement that he has made. The statement that has been made by the Finance Minister is admirable both in the content and in tone. The problem that faces us as a result of the emergence of the common market of Europe cannot be bypassed. Whether we like it or not, the future is with continental economies, and the emergence of the European Common Market of Europe is one of the steps in this direction. No one can deny the stakes that we have in the matter of entry of the United Kingdom into the common market of Europe. I have done some research into the actual position of our trade, and I think it would perhaps help the House to estimate the magnitude of the problem that is facing us. We are importing 35% of our imports from Western Europe, including UK. We are exporting about 40% of our goods to this area. We have a large interest in the outcome of UK's entry into the common market and the terms on which she proposes to enter into the common market. In the present circumstances, we cannot visualize what the terms will be, but we know that our stakes are great, and we have already indicated our deep interest in the terms which the UK would be able to negotiate. But having made our standpoint clear, it would be unbecoming of us to do anything else except to be prepared for all eventualities. I want the House to realize that while undoubtedly this is a great challenge, we ought to be prepared and not content ourselves with giving expression to certain views which might give the impression to the outside world that we are in a state of panic. To suggest, for instance, that the pattern of our trade should be changed overnight is not realistic. A changeover in trade is no solution. My honorable friend Shri Krishna Reddy pointed out that our balance of payments was most unfavorable with Germany. I know that it has been unfavorable, and while partly this is due to Germany imposing very high tariffs, let us realize that we have had to depend for aid and capital from the developed countries, notably Germany, and as such our balance of payments is bound to be unfavorable. It has been recommended by my friend that we ought to think of the pattern of trade being changed so that the Eastern European countries might our main customer. Before us, the advantages of rupee credit and rupee payments are dangled. I only want to sound a note of caution. While it is true that, from the point of view of our immediate difficulties, rupee payments offer a solution in the sense of imports not being a current draft on our foreign exchange resources, we ought not to suffer from the delusion that we are getting something for nothing, nor can we think that these rupee payments which are made may not work to our disadvantage. I do not propose to go into this question today, since the issues that merit consideration are different. I hope that Parliament will have an opportunity of discussing the whole scheme of rupee payments on some other occasion, so that we might have an opportunity of weighing the advantages and disadvantages of such rupee payments. No one for a moment objects to diversified pattern of trade and structure of trade which is not dependent on any particular grouping of nations. We have emphasized to a certain extent this diversified structure of trade. Probably in the future we have to emphasize it even more. But what is the position today? As it is, the terms which can be arranged for UK's entry into the common market are not dependent on that country alone. They are dependent on others as well. This is the position which we face. We should now find out how best we can line with this situation. There is one thing which has to be affirmed on this occasion. I hope Parliament will affirm it, because there is a danger of our overlooking it to the extent that we suffer by the new groupings in Europe. The moral responsibility of those countries to compensate us is all the greater. This would be in conformity with the trend of modern things in a modern welfare state. If an individual derives a benefit and others suffers injury, there is a principle of compensation or reparation that comes into operation in such a case. Stop. Starting in 5 seconds. First of all, I would like to thank the members of this house, all those who have spoken and all those who have even moved cut motions for the interest that they have evinced for the cause of health. I agree entirely with so many friends who have said that far too little time is given to this house for discussion and exchange of views on a subject which is so vital to the progress of the country. It is undoubtedly a nation building activity to cater to the health of the people committed to the charge of any government, and if we are not able to give enough attention to these problems, and if we are not able to give enough money to improve the standards of health, I am of course convinced that we shall not really make the progress that we want this country to make. I am, however, heartened by the fact that the countryside is health conscious. Anywhere that I go, the two things that the villager demands are medical aid and relief and schools for his children. And I believe that anything the people, the masses demand will certainly come about. I would like to comment on the points that have been raised by the various speakers. First of all, everybody has welcomed the malaria control program. I am very happy to be able to say that at the end of the 8th 5-year plan, we shall have covered 125 millions of the population from the risk of malaria, and I sincerely hope that by the end of the 9th 5-year plan, practically the entire country will have been covered, and that certainly means a tremendous asset to the nation, because those poor people who used to be laid out for 4 months in a year with malaria will now be able to help in the production, which is so vitally needed for progress. Then a comment has been made on the community projects. I think I ought to say that I have from the very beginning, ever since I was charged with serving the Ministry of Health, laid the greatest emphasis on medical aid and relief to the rural population in particular, because they have been sadly neglected up to date. I think it is impossible for a long time to come to give all hospital facilities for people. The first thing, therefore, that I took up was maternal and child welfare, and I am glad to be able to say that a great deal of progress has been made in maternal and child welfare. These centers have increased enormously. While I agree entirely with my friend that we have not, of course, got enough health centers in rural areas or enough personnel, I think the creation of the personnel, the creation of the health centers, the creation of the maternity and child welfare centers is going ahead with a fair amount of speed. I was delighted when I went the other day to Bhopal to see in the remotest villages that the villagers themselves have built up maternity and child welfare centers, and government have put qualified women to look after them. The care of the child is certainly our greatest responsibility, and the fact that the death rate per thousand of the estimated population has decreased during these last 7 years speaks, I think, in evidence of the fact that infant and maternal care is now receiving the care that it merits. I hope that in these community project areas, in the secondary health centers, which I would like to come into the national extension service blocks, still further care will be given to the maternal and child needs, so that we may be able to serve this part of the population better than we have done so far. A sum of rupees 50 lakhs has been given by the center especially for maternity and child welfare in the backward areas. Another sum of rupees 50 lakhs is being offered to the states, again from the center, apart from what the Planning Commission is doing for this vital work. Of course, health is a state subject. Many things that have been said by way of criticism leveled at me should really be leveled at the state governments. I have stated very clearly in the preamble to this report what the Central Ministry of Health is responsible for. I hope that honorable members of this house who have perused this report with the care that it merits will be able to give the Central Ministry of Health a certificate that in all the subjects that are under their care, this ministry has not been at all negligent. I know no one is more dissatisfied than I myself at the slow progress that we have made in the matter of provision of health services to the people. But with the limited resources at our disposal, I claim that we have made the most of what has been given to us. Stop. Starting in 5 seconds. Mr. Deputy Speaker, sir, before I say anything about defense, I would like to congratulate the Home Ministry on the splendid work it has done in connection with the improvement of the conditions of the scheduled caste and scheduled tribes. The present Home Minister and his ministry are not spending money on good schemes as used to be done in the past. They have got very many schemes, and those schemes are really worth spending lot of money. They are really for the benefit of these communities. I was going to ask the Home Ministry to set up a separate fund for the construction of houses for these communities, since the ministry concerned with housing had completely neglected this problem which is facing these communities. Even the Planning Commission in the last 5-year plan has not done much in this regard. I think even in the 10th 5-year plan, there is no definite plan for providing housing facilities for the scheduled caste and scheduled tribes. But since the housing minister has promised that he is going to constitute a board to go into these things, I do not think there is any need for me to stress this point anymore. About the board which is going to be constituted, I would definitely like to say a few words. This board, I believe, is going to consist of some members of the Harijan community and also a number of members belonging to non-Harijan communities. In any case, I would very much like that this board, which will of course function under the Home Ministry, should have as its chairman a non-Harijan. I want to stress this point because I know that in some of the states where the portfolio of Harijan welfare is given to a Harijan minister, he is not able to do his work properly. It is not because he cannot do it. It is not that he is not efficient enough to do it, but because every time he speaks about the welfare of scheduled caste and measures to be taken to improve their conditions, he is generally looked down by the other members of the cabinet as a communalist. If the same thing is done by a member belonging to a non-Harijan community, he will be considered to be doing a national service. Therefore, the chairmanship should go to a non-Harijan. The 10th 5-year plan, I understand, is going to be an industrial plan. Many industries are going to be established in this country. Therefore, I feel it my duty to say that the ministries concerned with heavy industries should take proper care in setting up new industries in places which are not very well developed. For instance, if a heavy industry is set up only in one state, all the ancillary factories crop up in that particular state, and the benefits are derived only by the people of that state. Even in the case of employment in those factories, it is always observed that the people belonging to that particular state get the preference, and the people belonging to other states do not get any benefit out of it. Therefore, the ministry should take proper care to see that these heavy industries are located in such places that they cater not only to one particular state but can also cater to more than one state. For instance, if a factory is located in the center of a state, the benefits of it will be derived only by the people of that particular state. There is a factory in Chennai, the Pelambur coach factory, which is producing coaches, that is located in the heart of the city of Chennai. It cannot help the people of either Andhra or Kerala. If the same factory were to be located on the borders, there may be so many ancillary industry, feeder industries in Andhra or in Kerala. Because it is located in the heart of the city of Chennai, only the people of that state could make any profit out of it. Therefore, I appeal to the ministry concerned to take proper steps to locate the future industries in such places so that they could be of help not only to one state but be of help to more than one state. In Hyderabad, there is a place which produces thermal power, but there are no industries to make use of that power. Repeated requests have been made by the government of Hyderabad, but the ministry at the center is not at all taking any notice of it. I think if a factory to produce electrical goods or a small fertilizer factory or a small engineering factory were to be located at that particular place, that will be able to cater not only to the Hyderabad state but also to Andhra and other places as well. Therefore, it is necessary that steps should be taken to see that heavy industries are located not in one particular state but on the borders of states. Stop. Starting in 5 seconds. Under the 12th 5-year plan, the government want to start junior technical institutes, but so far the education department is not in a position to know what type of junior technical institutes are going to be established in the country. Every time we ask the education department to furnish us with details of their schemes, the reply we get from the education ministry is that some officers of the department has been sent abroad to study this question, and only when he returns from abroad will they be able to finalize the thing. An officer of the education department has been sent to study these institutions in France. I think he must have spent 4 or 5 months in France. But the reply that the education ministry has given is that he could not study the entire scheme and he wants to some other officers to be deputed to study. As I said before, under the 12th 5-year plan, we are to start junior technical institutes, but so far the education department is not in a position to give even the correct information to those private agencies which are there ready to start these schools. Therefore, I request the education department not to sleep over things but to take very active steps in collecting the necessary information and in helping the private agencies who want to start these institutes in this country. I know my people are suffering because they have been given a very defective type of education. Today, we have to depend upon the reservations. Whenever any vacancy occurs in a department, that vacancy, even if it is reserved, is not filled by a scheduled caste man. Naturally, this type of education will not help a candidate to choose any other profession except to depend upon government establishments. Therefore, it is necessary at least to see that the scheduled caste, the scheduled tribes, and the tribal people do not depend upon the reserved services. They must be given technical education. For that, the education department will have to spend enormous money. I do not want government to simply waste money in propaganda against untouchability. This is a real step which would definitely improve the conditions and make the scheduled caste to be independent, that is, without being dependent upon government services. Therefore, I would like the Home Ministry to give special directives to all the state governments. I know in some of the states they have started special schools when they felt need, because in many of the other institutions the scheduled caste were not allowed in those days. At that time there were many states which had started special schools to cater to the needs of the scheduled caste. Now, when the government is not able to give the reserved vacancies to them, it is very necessary that these technical schools should be started so that the scheduled caste can be made independent and can prosper in this country. I join my friend in expressing satisfaction at the fact that the national income has recorded an increase of 18%, perhaps 7% more than the estimated increase. But I do not find evidence of this in any appreciable increase in the standard of living in the villages. I should like to know from the finance minister if this increase in national income is reflected in the general living of the people. Have they tried to find it out either by any sample survey or by any other method? We should know whether the benefit has reached the common man. As far as I am concerned, my own experience is that unemployment in the rural areas continues to be as high as it was before, if it has not recorded any increase. One way by which we can gauge this is by the number of persons crowding round public servants or public men for some sort of recommendations to secure jobs. In urban areas, the extent of unemployment is judged by the registrations in the employment exchange. I do not suppose there is any such device for the rural areas, and I think our experience can be depended upon to some extent for finding out the extent of unemployment. This leads me to feel that even though there is an increase in national wealth, the benefit is not going to the common man. Therefore, I feel that we should bring about a very drastic change in the property relations. If we are really keen on realizing the socialistic pattern of society, the sooner we change the property relation, the better. I believe the proportion in which the accumulated wealth of the nation is held by certain classes determines the pattern of production to a considerable extent. The pattern of production determines the pattern of distribution. We cannot therefore secure distributive justice unless and until there is a change in property relations. We have therefore abolished the sanctity attached to the properties, and we have made compensation payable to those who are expropriated and non-justiciable. Stop. Starting in 5 seconds. During the last general elections, the government found on careful consideration that it would not have been possible to provide such facilities without rousing criticism of unfairness and partiality from one group or the other. However, after the elections, the government have given careful thought to the matter. Practices prevailing in other democratic countries have also been studied and compared. It is well to remember that examples of other countries that can be cited in this behalf are not uniform and are based on conditions which differ radically in many important respects from country to country. The practical aspect of the question has also great importance. The area of the country, the form of government, federal or unitary, and the number of parties involved all are factors which have been kept in mind by various countries in taking a decision. In USA, where broadcasting is run by private enterprise, though certain principles of equal opportunity have been laid down by the Federal Communications Commission, in practice it is a rare occurrence because time has to be purchased and a great deal of bickering and dissatisfaction always exists. In Great Britain, only since war opportunities have been provided for a few election broadcasts, the allotment of time being subject to the strength of the parties and other practical considerations. In countries like Switzerland, no time is permitted for election purpose on the radio, while in France it is given, though the time allotted is extremely short, 5 minutes or less. It is clear from a study of foreign practices that each country has taken the conditions prevailing there and also the number of parties and other factors into consideration. The analogy of other countries, therefore, is of not much validity in coming to any conclusion as far as India is concerned. Taking into consideration the conditions prevailing in our country, the government feel that it would be extremely difficult, if not impossible, to make satisfactory arrangements for giving such facilities to all political parties. Besides the points mentioned above, another important factor has to be considered. In other countries, for national broadcasting, only one language is used, and that too only in national elections. The exception is Switzerland, where there are 3 languages, that it is one of the important reasons that Switzerland does not permit the use of the national radio for election purposes and even for commercial purposes. In India, we are confronted with the task of providing facilities in 12 languages besides English, and they would be asked to give equal facilities from stations of All India Radio, which are 26 in number. Moreover, in working out any practical formula, it has to be remembered that the number of parties which will have to be provided with these facilities comes to nearly 26. The apportionment of time between the various political parties and at different stations of the AIR would be a task of extreme difficulty and is bound to lead to criticism and partiality. The determination of the principle for purposes of allocation of time will also lead to much controversy. Language stations of regional centers of AIR might have to cater to a large number of parties and provide them with time for broadcast in at least 2 to 3 languages and sometimes more. Apportionment of time is made in different countries in different manners, some doing it on the number of votes polled, others on the number of candidates put up by parties. We feel that any such apportionment would result in recriminations and criticism of government. On the other hand, if all parties have to be provided with equal time, the normal activities of the AIR stations will have to be drastically curtailed during the election time. The proposal to provide broadcasting time in a fair and reasonable manner therefore seems almost insoluble in practice. In view of these practical considerations, government have come to the conclusion that it would not be possible to allow political parties generally to utilize the facilities of the radio for election purposes. However, government feel that an experiment permitted such utilization on a restricted scale might be tried in order to see whether such facilities can be used for specific election purposes without taking a major part of the time of the radio and also without leading to a charge of discrimination or partiality. It has been decided that the 4 All India parties recognized by the Election Commission might be allowed the facility of supplying a summary of their election manifestos prepared by themselves, which will be broadcast by AIR subject to usual rules. Such summaries might not exceed 10 minutes and will be broadcast in English and in all the regional languages of the country. If this opportunity is allowed at least to the leading political parties of the country, it will surely further strengthen the system of democratic government in the country and will provide healthy and fair conditions for fighting the general elections. Stop. Starting in 5 seconds. The President's address makes mention of the Code of Discipline and the happy industrial relations which are developing in the country. This code of discipline is a very good thing, but I am sorry to say that the success claimed for it has not come as yet. The employers in the country have not accepted this code of discipline in its spirit. They have not accepted it voluntarily. They have not shown by their conduct that they understand and appreciate the spirit of the code of discipline, and something will have to be done about it. The code of discipline can bring about better harmonious relations. It can bring about better industrial relations, and it can create conditions in which the industrial production in the country will go up by leaps and bounds. Industrialists in the private sector and some of the bureaucrats in the public sector do not accept this code of discipline, and unless the Ministry of Labor does something drastic about it, unless the Ministry of Labor does something which would make the non-observance of this code on the part of the employers a penal offense, I am afraid the spirit of the code would be defeated. The Ministry of Labor has done well in bringing forward a code of efficiency and welfare. There is as yet not enough agreement on that code, even from the labor's point of view. But I am sure efforts to further the acceptance of this code of efficiency and welfare will be continued, and if that is done, it will be a great help to industrial production in the country. In the matter of the bonus commission, sir, the progress made has been disappointing. It was as early as January 2011 that the Honorable Labour Minister announced the appointment of the Commission. The progress made in respect of the bonus commission during the last 14 months has been that its terms of reference have been settled and its constitution has been agreed upon. That, I am afraid, is very slow speed in the direction of the solution of a problem whose solution is so very important. The President has correctly mentioned the great objective of securing workers' participation in the management and the establishing of joint management councils. But the most important thing is that the gains or the profits should be shared by the toilers. A share of the produce of their toil should come back to those who toil. The acceptance of profit sharing is an old thing. It was accepted by those responsible for the industrial truce 14 years back, but we are yet to evolve a satisfactory formula. The full bench formula of the Labour Appellate Tribunal, repeatedly approved and endorsed by the orthodox judges of the Supreme Court, is no solution of the problem. It just denies the workers their due share in the profits. It was because of this peculiar situation that the need of appointment of the bonus commission was accepted by all parties. But what we now find is that it has taken them 14 months to decide the terms of reference of the commission, and I do not know when we can expect its report. The members of the bonus commission should be directed by the government to find an early solution to this important problem. Similarly, I must point out that the delay in the matter of evolving a consolidated scheme of social security for industrial workers is a dangerous thing. We have today a number of social security schemes, but none of them looks after the workers in his old age. The government of Uttar Pradesh made a provision that the discharge of workers because of ill health or old age should be treated as retrenchment. But we have now the verdict of the High Court of Allahabad that this cannot be done. The result is that while workers in industrial establishments today are covered against the risk of ill health, there is no insurance against the risk of old age. There is no scheme of gratuity which the industry has to follow. There is no old age pension scheme which the industries in the country have to adhere to. The result is that there is a big gap of disparity in the lives of the workers who are in employment and those who are out of it, particularly those who are thrown out of employment because of old age or continued ill health. Therefore, something should be done about it as soon as possible, and there should be some sort of a scheme to see that the worker, after meritorious service to the industry, got at least the equivalent of a retrenchment relief when he retired due to old age or continued ill health. That is a pressing problem. We know that in Kanpur, industrialists have adopted the practice of terminating the employment of workers merely by giving them 12 days notice. The worker is told that he has been found to be unfit. Stop. Starting in 5 seconds. I would like briefly to give the background under which this bill has been brought forward by the government. The House is aware that this institution has been in existence now for nearly half a century. It was established in 1960 and since then it has rendered very valuable service for the promotion of Hindi, and through holding various conferences it focused the attention of the country to the great importance of Hindi as a national language. This institution has rendered valuable service in various other ways also. It has been conducting examinations. It has also been affiliating institutions which are doing similar kind of work in the field of Hindi, and it has branches in various parts of the country. The institution has also built up a library which probably contains almost all the books which have been published in Hindi so far, and it has a valuable collection of manuscripts. I understand that it is one of the best in the whole country. It conducts various examinations and these examinations have been recognized by the government. It has also on its rolls a large number of members. Some differences have arisen among the members, and the activities of the institution have been paralyzed. After the declaration of Hindi as the official language, it was thought by the Sammelan that it was necessary to amend its constitution. Therefore, at the Hyderabad session of the Sammelan held in March 1999, a resolution was passed for the amendment of the constitution, and a committee of 21 members was appointed to frame the rules and place its recommendations before a special session of the Sammelan to be held at Patna. This committee did prepare a draft constitution for the Sammelan, and it was placed before the Patna session of the Sammelan. But unfortunately, at this session, differences arose among the members, and after a good deal of discussion, it was decided ultimately to entrust the framing of the constitution to a committee of 11 persons, with this proviso that a constitution signed by 8 members shall be deemed to be approved by the general session of the Sammelan. This committee prepared a constitution, and it was considered by the session of the committee held in December. At this session, differences arose among the members, and the Sammelan was not able to hold its session. The situation now is that the institution is in the hands of an official receiver. He has done good work, but obviously at the present moment, because he is only an honorary person looking after the institution, he cannot give much time, and the institution had not been doing the work for which it was established several years back. Various efforts have been made to bring about some kind of a settlement, but all these efforts have failed. Ultimately, the Uttar Pradesh government had to intervene and pass the Act of 2006. This act was also in the nature of an interim measure, but the act of the UP government was challenged in the High Court at Allahabad, and it was declared ultra vires mainly on the ground that it created a corporation with objects not confined to one state, and the court said that legislation could be passed only by parliament. We have been receiving various representations from people who are interested in the welfare of this institution and the promotion of Hindi, and the government have therefore thought it proper to declare this institution as an institution of national importance, and to rescue the institution which has unfortunately fallen into evil days. This is the main purpose for which this bill has been brought forward. The special features of this bill are these. we are proposing to appoint a governing body which will consist of a chairman, a secretary, and 13 other members, all to be appointed by the central government. But this will only be an interim measure. This bill empowers the governing body to make, with the approval of the central government, the rules of the Sammelan. It will also set up a properly constituted government body which will take charge of the institution in course of time. The House will note that in clause 12 of the bill, the governing body has been empowered to make, with the approval of the central government, rules of the Sammelan in respect of matters relating to membership, including the qualifications and disqualifications for membership of the Sammelan, the powers and functions of the governing body, the conduct of election for the constitution of the governing body, and the decisions on doubt and disputes at or in connection with these elections. It is also proposed that the accounts of this institution should be audited by a chartered accountant. The Government of India have a certain responsibility in the promotion of Hindi, and the House is aware that government have taken various measures to promote Hindi throughout the country during last several years. Stop. Starting in 5 seconds. You have rightly stated that the principle of this bill has been unanimously accepted by the House, and most of the relevant points have been made out, and that no time of the House should be taken by repeating the same points again and again. One of the points on which I want to lay stress, and which is being disputed again and again by the treasury benches, is the question of cottage industries. Though you pointed out to them yesterday that there is provision in this bill to take into consideration the cottage industries also, and the Honorable the Deputy Minister realized it again. There was a point raised by Mr. Sidhwa today, and the Honorable Speaker, who was in the chair at the time, said that the scope of the bill is confined only to the consideration of protection to industries as against foreign industries, to give protection to the indigenous industries as against imported goods, and the question of cottage industry does not come in here. The Honorable Deputy Minister deployed this. Unless protection is given to indigenous industries, we shall not be able to develop industrially. I wholeheartedly support this proposition. I am not against it. When I speak of cottage industries, I do not for a moment think that our country should not be developed on the same lines as the other countries in the world. I want that every villager should have the same amenities that we sitting in this house have. Every villager should have these furnitures, fittings, houses, and so on. The only thing is that the existing economy should not be disturbed and sacrificed before substitute arrangement is made. Before we give protection to any bigger industries, the first thing we should consider is that the materials which are at present being produced in our villages to meet the requirements of our villages and on which the economic life of the villagers rest are properly safeguarded. We should see that we have sufficient quantity of consumer goods to meet the necessities of all people in the country, and nothing is done merely in the interest of 10% of the people at the sacrifice of existing village economy before making sure of some better substitute. I find that at the present moment our attention is confined to the amenities and requirements of a portion of the population only. The other day, my honorable friend Mr. Krishnamachari, whom I regard as a great economist and who know finance etc., and looks to the interest of the country and gives very good advice, said that we do not want to go to medieval age and the luxury of yesterday is the necessity of today, and that few articles which we import today from many foreign countries and the few industries which we are starting for recreation and amenities of the people should not be grudged. I agree with him. I do not grudge them, but looking to the condition as it is today and the circumstances under which we are placed and over which we have no control, if we want to develop our country on the same basis as others country have done industrially and otherwise, we do not have at our command all the necessary materials and we simply cannot do it with the speed we want. We have to depend upon others, so at least during the transitional period it may be that the necessities of yesterday may have to be regarded as the luxuries of today and for the some time have to take to austerity to be squarely distributed. I welcomed this bill most heartily when I went through it, but when the deputy minister was speaking, he probably overlooked or gave scant attention to one point. I am referring to clause 12 in the regard to the reference to the Commission on matters arising out of protection. Of the things mentioned there are different sectors of the country's economy on which the Commission may inquire and report. Whenever we start new industries and give protection to them, this clause is always neglected. It should not be merely that the central government may also refer, but they must refer to this as one of the conditions under clause 14 when the Fiscal Commission recommends that this tariff commission should take so many points into consideration. The different sectors of the country's economy must be one of the points that must be taken into consideration. The other day there was a question about the acquisition of the Visakhapatnam shipping yard when he had to pay rupees 2 to 3 crores for acquiring it. One of the points we took into consideration was the unemployment of 4,000 workers, and for keeping them in employment we suffered a loss in view of the agitation that was carried on. We sacrificed the existing necessary supply of the villagers and throw them out of employment without making any arrangement for their substitute requirements and without providing them with alternative employment. Stop. Starting in 5 seconds. Mr. Deputy Speaker, Sir, may I, with your permission, intervene and say a few words in regard to the various matters that have been discussed. My colleague, the Finance Minister, who is in charge of this particular budget, will no doubt deal with the specific matters that have been raised in the course of this debate. I need hardly remind the House of the fact that although this budget is the individual responsibility of the Finance Minister, it is also the responsibility of the entire government, and as Prime Minister, I am entirely responsible for it as well as any other members of the government. This budget was placed before the House after the usual consideration by the government, and the latter is completely committed to it. That does not mean that we are not willing to consider any new proposals. We certainly are, so long as the basic structure of the budget is not affected. My friend, the Honorable Professor Shah, pointed out various difficulties in the way of a debate here and in the way of consideration of the budget proposals. He pointed out how little could be done in the allocated time. I am in complete agreement with him in this matter. If there are any practical proposals which would enable us to give more time for the consideration of these problems, either formally or informally, I am quite sure that the Finance Minister will gladly consider them. The real difficulty is, however, more basic, and it is this: the kind of problems which the government has to face now is so vast and intricate that it is impossible for any democratic parliamentary assembly to give enough time for its consideration. It is just a question of time. This is not a new difficulty. I remember that long debates on this subject took place in a country like the United Kingdom, where they found that they could not get along with what is really the 19th century procedure in this 20th century of continuous crisis, social problems, and international problems. So, even parliamentary procedure in the United Kingdom has gradually changed, and many matters are left more to the committees than to the House itself. Usually, a principle is decided by the House and its working out is left to committees. The House cannot find time to consider everything. That is a difficulty inherent in the situation. If we can find a remedy for it, it will not only be good for us, but maybe we will be setting an example for other democratically inclined countries who are seeking such remedies. In spite of the fact that Parliament is in continuous session, it is not able to find time to consider in detail all the important matters that come up. We have In fact, much less time because we are not in continuous session. I suppose our sessions will inevitably become longer and longer so as to enable us to deal with more and more problems and have more and more discussions. Anyhow, I have stated what the difficulty is at present, though I am in sympathy with what Professor Shah said. I have no easy remedy for that difficulty except to say that we are perfectly prepared to consider, together with the honorable members of the House, any ideas or suggestions about how to give greater facilities for more intensive discussion of any great problem. An honorable member referred to the budget speech as being directly or indirectly a survey of all manner of problems, domestic, international, economic, foreign, etc. The House can hardly expect the finance minister's budget speech to be a survey of all these tremendous problems, although they have no doubt some bearing on the budget. The world is becoming far too intricate and difficult for us to be able to keep the full picture in view always. As I listened to the honorable member who spoke just now, I was wondering whether we had the larger picture in mind or were getting lost in a few minor and secondary matters. For instance, having referred to the government's extravagance, the honorable member went on to say certain things in regard to our bringing forward a bill for giving a pension to the president. That signified to me an approach which I would call 100% wrong. Besides, I should have thought that the subject of pension for the president was hardly a matter for debate or reference here. I say, even if this country is starving, even then you have to provide for our president. The honorable member perhaps prefers starvation for the present and himself. I certainly will not stand in his way, but we are considering graver matters than this, and the fact that such points are raised shows that we are not looking at the problems. We do not seem to be thinking of the vast problems that we are faced with and have to wrestle with the vast problem of the country's economy in relation to the world's economy. Stop. Starting in 5 seconds. The honorable member who has just spoken has dealt with certain wider questions which appears to me to go beyond the scope of the present bill, which is a short bill before the House. The House will remember that when this commission was appointed, they were entrusted with two tasks. One was to examine the whole income tax procedure and suggest ways and means to avoid or prevent evasion in future. Secondly, they were to examine specific cases which were referred to them what the honorable member has been saying really refers to the first part, that is the wider question. As has been stated, I believe in the statement of objects and reasons we have received from the Income Tax Investigation Commission recommendations on this wider issue, and they will no doubt come up before the House in the form of a measure, and the House will then have full opportunities of considering them, adding to them, or altering them so that we might evolve a proper procedure. The sole question before the House now is what to do with the inquiry part of the Commission's work with regard to certain cases that were referred to them. Now, I would beg the House to remember that this is not a roving inquiry. This inquiry has been confined to a certain number of specific cases referred to them up to a certain date. No further cases can come up before them. Apart from that, a fair number of all the cases that have been referred to them has been disposed of, and a large number still remains, and this bill is limited to those particular cases and none other. It does not affect the larger issue, and obviously the larger issue cannot be considered in the form of amendments to this particular bill, which is meant to give an opportunity to the Commission of Inquiry to complete its task in those specific cases which have been entrusted to it. This matter would normally, of course, have been dealt with by my honorable colleague, the Finance Minister. Unfortunately, he is not here, but I should like to inform the House that next only to the Finance Minister, I have taken a great deal of interest in the work of this Commission, more perhaps than any other of my colleagues. Of course, the Finance Minister will be better able to deal with it. I have also been fairly closely connected with the matter in the sense that I have attached great importance to this work, and I have occasionally had talks with the members of the Commission to find out how they were getting on. May I say that the criticism that has been made, I think yesterday, by an honorable member about the rather sorry result of their labors appears to me totally unjustified. I feel their labors have resulted in very substantial and very good results. They have labored under great difficulties, and in spite of that, they have proceeded calmly and steadily with their work in the highest judicial traditions. And the House will remember that the chairman of this commission is one of our most eminent and respected judges of India. We attached great importance to the fact that a commission of this kind must have men of the highest ability and integrity, and we were fortunate in finding such a man in Mr. Vradachari. Anything entrusted to a judge of that high standing with his lifelong experience of the bench is bound to be carried out in a judicial manner. The House can be sure of that. In fact, possibly, if delays have occurred as they have, partly they are due to the fact that the Commission and the Chairman are anxious to preserve every type of judicial procedure and not to do anything which might even give any suspicion of hurrying through and not giving that opportunity which should be given. If the House could see the decisions that they have given, they are tremendously long, 70, 80 or 100 pages. They have carefully gone through every opportunity and have come to certain decisions. Most of these decisions also, I would like the House to remember, are ultimately by consent. Now, the difficulty in dealing with such matters through, let us say, the income tax department, which is the normal way of dealing with them, has been that they cannot deal with them both judicially and at the same time informally. They have to be formal, their rules govern them, and the people concerned do not like that particular process. They do not welcome it. They do not go there easily unless they are compelled by law to go there. They do come, at least relatively, with this reluctance to this inquiry commission, because the inquiry commission can deal with them informally, can come to deal with them informally, can come to terms with them, almost any terms that they consider just and proper, which the income tax department cannot easily do always in this manner. Stop. Starting in 5 seconds. At the outset, I should like to state that we are not able to understand some of the secrets of the railway board and the policy which they are following. When I say secret, I mean that they have got certain policies and methods which are not easily understandable by people like us. There is no proper organization through which the ordinary railway laborers and their associations could represent their grievances. The Honorable Minister was pleased to say the other day that there is the Railwaymen's Federation, but I must tell him that the practical difficulty of all the unions in the railways is that they are not able to push their case through the Railwaymen's Federation. Another thing I would like to point out is that when representations are made to the Honorable Railway Minister or the Railway Board, in many cases we get a suitable reply, and as far as I have seen, we do get a suitable reply, but that is all. I would request the Honorable Minister to see that their cases are properly considered and something is done for them. The other day I presented to the Honorable Minister and also the Railway Board the case of the sanitary inspectors. They are classified as supervisory staff. Prior to 3rd May 2008, they were given upper class passes like other officers, but since that date, all of a sudden, the upper class passes have been stopped for these people. We do not understand why this discrimination should have been made against these sanitary inspectors. I would request the Honorable Minister to see that proper consideration is shown to them and to remove inconsistencies in this regard. Even though repeated representations have been made to the Railway Board and the Honorable Minister, the case of the running staff has never been properly considered at all. In the case of B grade firemen, all of a sudden the literacy qualification was introduced and people who have passed the SSLC examination have been taken directly as firemen. But what about the case of those who entered service before this literacy question was introduced? Some of them have put in more than 10 years of service. They were recruited by a staff selection board after proper examination. They were never required to pass the SSLC examination when they entered service. But suddenly this literacy qualification has been introduced and their chances of promotion have been reduced. The number of persons affected is very small, and I would therefore request the Honorable Minister to look into their case favorably. Another point is about telegraph inspectors. They are the people who look after the maintenance of telegraph lines. They have been recruited in the normal manner and they are the people who have put in service of more than 10 or 15 years. The question of wireless inspectors came in at that time of war. They are now classified along with telegraph inspectors. Whenever certain appointments or grades are introduced, the case of the telegraph inspectors is overlooked. The wireless inspectors, who are called communication inspectors at present, came into the picture only at the time of war. Now what happens is that the telegraph inspectors who have put in a service of more than 10 or 15 years and who look after the work which was used to be done by the wireless inspectors are neglected and overlooked. I hope their cases will receive the deepest consideration of government and a proper solution will be found. I now come to the grievances of travelling ticket examiners. Representations were made by them that they should be classified as running staff. They are not sitting staff. They have been representing that they should be classified as running staff along with drivers and firemen. Their cases have also been overlooked. It is a small case and the railway board can easily understand it if only they have a mind to look into the matter. There are ever so many things, but I do not want to mention them all. I do not understand the secrets of the delay. According to the railway board, delay means 10 years. That is the minimum. I am not exaggerating. I shall give you an example. An estimate for constructing an overbridge was sanctioned 10 years ago. Nobody came there. I requested the Honorable Deputy Minister to visit that place. He was pleased to visit it. I must thank the Honorable Deputy Minister on behalf of my constituency. What happens is that we cannot be taking the Honorable Railway Minister or the Honorable Deputy Minister to each and every place where our work has to be executed. This is another point which I want the Railway Ministry as well as the Railway Board to bear in mind. People are nowadays afraid of traveling in aeroplanes, but I think that a reference to the volume of papers supplied to us will show that accidents to trains are increasing day by day. Stop.